Hi there, I'm your imaginary friend. And today I've got for you not a story exactly, but a letter containing a few stories. Now, when I remember to, I try to invoke Luke Westaway's wise words of warning that when you're reading things from historical context, sometimes you find the real horror is Victorian attitudes towards race, disability, mental health, all sorts of things. Now this letter comes from a little earlier on the timetable than the Victorian era. This is from Pliny the Younger, a letter written to his friend Licinius Sura, and makes some disturbingly casual reference to slavery as a normal, everyday sort of thing. So keep that in mind. Our leisure offers us the opportunity for me to play the pupil and you the master. So, what I should very much like to know is whether you believe ghosts exist and have a form peculiar to them and some supernatural power, or whether they are insubstantial and illusory, acquiring shape merely from our fear. I am especially inclined to believe in their existence, from what I am told happened to Curtius Rufus. While he was still a menial and little known figure, he had become a member of the staff of the governor of Africa. Late one afternoon he was strolling in the colonnade when the figure of a woman, larger and more beautiful than a human, appeared before him. He was petrified. She told him that she was Africa, and had come to foretell the future to him. She said he would repair to Rome, hold high positions, and also return to that same province invested with the supreme command. There he would die. The entire prophecy came true. Moreover, as he neared Carthage and was disembarking, so the story goes, the same figure met him on the shore. What is definite is that when he fell ill, he drew upon his past to foretell his future, and on his happy days to presage his ill fortune. For though none of his entourage feared for him, he himself abandoned hope of recovery. Hear now this second story, which I shall recount as I heard it. Surely it is more terrifying and no less astonishing than the first. At Athens, there is a sprawling, roomy house which was notorious and plague-ridden. In the silence of the night, the clink of metal was heard. Then, to one of keener hearing, the distant rattle of chains was initially audible, and then resounded from close at hand. A spectre appeared, an old man bowed down with emaciation and filth, with a flowing beard and bristling hair. He wore fetters on his legs and chains on his wrists, which he kept rattling. As a result, the residents were kept awake in terror all through the grim and dread nights. Their lack of sleep induced illness, and then, as their fear grew, death. For even during the day, though the ghost had retired, the recollection of it roamed before their eyes, and their fear survived longer than the causes of it. The house was then abandoned and condemned to lie empty, left wholly to that spectre. But it was put up for sale in case anyone unaware of that monstrous evil wished to buy or rent it. The philosopher Athenodorus visited Athens. He read the advertisement, and on hearing the price, he was suspicious because it was so cheap. So, on making inquiries, he learnt the whole story. And in spite of it, or rather all the more because of it, he rented the house. When the day began to draw in, he ordered a couch to be laid for him in front of the house. He asked for tablets, a pen, and a lamp, and consigned all his servants to the inner part of the house. He concentrated his brain and eyes and hand upon his writing, for fear that if his mind was unoccupied, he would imagine the presence of the apparitions which he had heard of, and arouse in himself empty fears. At first, the night was as silent there as elsewhere, but then there was the clank of metal and the movement of chains. The philosopher did not raise his eyes or abandon his pen, but he fortified his mind and stopped his ears. Then the noise intensified and drew nearer. Now it was audible at the threshold, and now within the threshold. He looked back and saw and recognized the spectre as it had been described to him. It stood there, signaling with a finger, as though summoning him. In response, he gestured with his hand that it should wait a little, and again he bent over his tablets and his pen. The wraith rattled its chains over his head as he spoke. He again looked back at the ghost, which was signaling as before. and without lingering he picked up his lamp and followed. The spectre proceeded with heavy steps, as though burdened with its chains. After diverging into the courtyard of the house, it suddenly glided away, and left him as he was accompanying it. Now left alone, he plucked some plants and leaves, and marked the spot with them. Next day he approached the magistrates, advising them to bid the place to be dug up. Bones were unearthed there, encircled and entwined with chains. The corpse had rotted with its time in the earth, and had left the bones uncovered and worn away with the chains. They were gathered and buried at public expense. Thereafter the house was free of the shades, which had been duly buried. These details are attested by other persons, and I believe them. But I can attest to others the truth of the story that follows. I have a freedman of some education. Sleeping in the same bed with him was a younger brother. My freedman seemed to observe a man sitting on the bed and applying scissors to his head, cutting off the hair from his crown. When daylight came, the crown of his head was shorn, and the hair was found lying there. A short period elapsed, and a similar episode in turn lent credence to that earlier one. A young slave was sleeping among several others in the slaves' compound. As he tells the story, two figures in white tunics came through the window, cut his hair as he lay there, and retired the way they had come. The daylight showed that he too had been shorn, and his hair was scattered all around. Nothing untoward followed, except perhaps that I was not indicted, though I would have been if Domitian, in whose reign these events occurred, had lived longer. For found on his desk was a document laid against me by Carus. Since it is customary for persons indicted to let their hair grow long, this allows me to guess that the cutting of my servant's hair was an indication that the danger looming over me was averted. So I ask you to apply your learning to this question, for it merits your sustained and deep thinking. I am surely not unworthy to receive the benefits of your abundant knowledge. For though, as usual, you may present the arguments on both sides, you must come down more strongly on one or the other, so as to leave me in no doubt and uncertainty. For my purpose in consulting you was to foreclose my vacillation. Farewell.